Hello, and welcome to Lore Watch, a roundtable freeform discussion about lore and your favorite media. I'm your host, Joe Perez, one of several lore-focused folks from Blizzard Watch, and I've got my marvelous co-host with me today, Matt Rossi. How you doing today, Matt?
I was just looking at something about Marvel, but I don't think it was Marvel Comics. I think it was literally Captain Marvel. At any rate, Brain not here. Let's do show.
All right, friends. Well, as a reminder, if you have anything that you'd like us to discuss, whether it's a question or a topic for the show, be sure to send those into podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it's for in the subject line, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. If you want to hit us up on Discord, you can do so. We have the Q and Podcast Question channel, which is open to everybody. Same rules apply. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you can hit us up on the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel. We tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep the lights on. And you can also just message us on Patreon and make Liz do work, because she'll get those messages to us. And it's always fun when we make Liz do things. She's listening to this right now, and I can hear her cursing me. You're welcome, Liz. All right, friends. Well, this one is actually something that's been asked for by many of you out there, which is essentially a story recap of everything that's happened in The War Within so far, at least at a high level. There has been a bunch, and we're going to do our best to kind of get through it within the hour that we have here.
I got to jump in really fast here.
Go ahead.
Guys, if we missed something, please just forgive us and possibly say, hey, you forgot. Please don't get mad. We don't do that on purpose. We're not neglecting your favorite character or whatever. There's a lot, and we're just people.
Yeah, and also that said, for those of you at home as well, there are going to be spoilers up through the end of the Undermine campaign, which is where we're going to cut it off today. So if you haven't finished Undermine yet, maybe come back and visit this episode afterwards, or you can stop when we start talking about that portion of it. But I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with starting with essentially what happened during the pre-patch, or what happened before the expansion officially released, which was the Visions of Azeroth. This is a series of videos and in little tidbits of various visions known as the Radiant Song happening to many folks across Azeroth. In particular, Thrall, Lady Jaina Proudmoore, Anduin Wrynn are folks that were then basically, because of this vision, because of the song that they were hearing, thinking that it was Azeroth or feeling that it was Azeroth, went out to go seek Magni Bronzebeard, who was the speaker for Azeroth itself. But that is weird, because before this, at least what was for most folks was weird, is that Azeroth has been silent for several years before these visions started happening. Magni is injured attempting to commune with Azeroth, so then they relocate to Dalaran, the floating city, home of the Kirin Tor, with Magni's daughter Moira and her son, his grandson, Dagran Tharisian II. After working with Khaz, Illyria Windrunner, on how to proceed, Magni awakens and explains that Azeroth warned him of dark forces on the subterranean continent of Khaz Algar. So what do? Well, the mages decide, you know what? We're going to teleport a whole city there. That's what we do. We did it for Northrend. We'll do it here too. We have the coordinates. We got the coordinates. All right, time to get ready. So you, as the player, go around, and your engagement of the story is to recalibrate the wards for a wonderful mage that hadn't been seen for decades. And, well, there's a whole reason for that later. You get teleported, and as you're teleporting, basically you find out that mage that you really, Drendon, that you weren't really sure where he came from, yeah, it was Zaltath in disguise. There's a full-scale assault on the city. All these Nerubians start taking over into the city, and it's all-out warfare. They begin kidnapping civilians. And then after Illyria and Anduin evacuate all of the remaining citizen, Khaz confronts Zaltath and witnesses her absorbing the arcane energies of Dalaran into the dark heart before blowing up the city. And what we think at the time is Khaz along with it. This is where you start to see the scale of the power of the dark heart, which had previously been seen in the time ways when going back and dealing with Eridicron, that had been seen to absorb the power out of the corpse of Galakrond, which was an answer to a question of how did all that corruption not just lay waste to the land around Galakrond's corpse? Well, technically now we know because it's not a paradox. Did I miss anything in there, Matt?
I mean, there's a lot in there. There's always more. That's the messed up thing about all of this. But you weren't even talking about the actual, like, you're talking about the pre-stuff. It gets, I don't know where I'd say, okay, now we're in the actual expansion.
I think it's after this moment, because once Dalaran is teleported to Khaz Algar and is exploded, you're officially in the expansion. You're officially starting the story where you are trying to figure out where you are and what's going on. Do you want to talk about that with the survivors and meeting the Earthen for the first time?
First off, can I just say that it is, once again, we show up and immediately rain destruction down upon a completely unrelated place. But now we've taken a city out in the process. So yeah, wow, great. I mean, I don't want to take away credit to Xal'atath, and quite frankly, since lore, which we also time to talk about how the lore is told, not just what the lore is, I have got to give credit where credit is due. The cinematic that you see when you get into your, hey, we're in our floating magical city, and you go to, oh God, our floating magical city. That cinematic is creepy AF and really well done. The bit where you find out, oh, hey, that guy who's been on, who's literally been clued in on all our plans, and he's one of the archmages in the Council of Six. Nah, he's been Xal'atath the whole time. Because as if you'd been paying attention, as Joe was, you knew not to trust that dude because that dude was dead.
Yeah, the first words out of my mouth on Guild Discord while doing that was, "Wait, Drennan's dead. Why is he here?"
Yeah, and the thing is that I think a lot of us just thought they'd forgotten. Because, that happens sometimes. Storyteller forgets, there's lots of characters in Warcraft. Maybe they just forgot that Drendan was dead. No, they didn't forget. So, yeah. Basically what happens is Xal'atath, inside the body of Archmage Drendan, I don't know if she was literally in his actual body or if she just made herself look like him. I don't know the deal. But I know that it turned out that Xal'atath had wanted to get us there, unleashed her full army against us, and everything goes to poo-poo. And it is. I think some of the best openings to expansions are ones that throw you in the deep end and don't really explain what's happening. But this one explained exactly what was happening and then threw me in the deep end. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm still drowning. It's actually worse. So yeah, kudos to that. Everything goes to heck. The city literally gets destroyed and chunks of it fall all over the place. We spend at least a few minutes getting the survivors together, killing as many Nerubians as we can, because one of the things that happens while the city is being destroyed is that it is completely invaded by Nerubians who are doing Xal'atath's bidding. And that's great. You always want to see that, right? Nothing quite as happiness making as an army of Nerubians just teleporting into your city and messing it up. So yeah, that happens. You're fighting Nerubians. You're trying to get everybody back together, and then an Earthen on a big lightning griffin shows up, blows up the main giant horrible Nerubian. Although he escapes, he doesn't die, and it's like, why are you here? Like, why are you on our shores? What are you doing here? And I'm sad to say I can't remember his name because he's actually a really cool character. You know him, right, Joe? Please.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I know what you're talking about.
Basically,
he's the leader of the Storm Riders.
Yes, he's the leader of Storm Riders, and you're basically brought to the main Earthen hub Dornogal. In the area, Dornogal on Dornogal on. I keep wanting to say Khaz Algar, not Dornogal. You go to Dornogal with him. He flies you in because the Nerubians are attacking the city, and they're all over the and they're coming up from a giant pathway.
Stormward Baelgrim. Sorry.
Baelgrim. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Former Baelgrim. Baelgrim is essentially one of three on what is like lacking of a better word, is a council that runs the Earthen. The Earthen have some problems. Number one, their giant coreward hole which is literally this giant pathway that goes into the bowels of Azeroth and leads to the underground, various underground worlds, is swarming with Nerubians. Also, the Earthen no longer have complete access to their own racial memory. When Earthen, quote unquote, die, they are supposed to leave their memories behind in like crystals that are then brought to this archiving system and put in. It's not like immortality, but it is a way for them to preserve something of what they learned and experienced during their lives. Only that's not happening anymore. It's messed up, and they don't know why. So they have that problem. Some of the Earthen are basically rebelling against what their originally Titan-given caste system told them they should be, and are like, I'm not doing this. We don't even know if the Titans are still out there. We're going to go just live lives. And so, including a very important one who comes back into the story later, goes off and is like living with, basically, for lack of a better word, exiled Earthen, who are no longer doing their jobs as part of the system that was designed when this was all put together by the Titans. As a result, Earthen society is in tumult. They're like, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. It's like, we're forgetting what we're supposed to be doing. We don't even know how to do it. And we've lost contact with the other Earthen deep underground who are supposed to be in charge of the mechanism for creating more Earthen. We don't even have more Earthen anymore. So the Earthen are pretty messed up. Magni, at first they're not particularly interested in listening to us till Magni shows up. And they see Magni and they're like, oh, it's a diamond one. And they all kneel down to Magni and are like, yes, tell us what to do, servant of the Titans. And he's like, I have no idea what you should do, but we definitely should do it. And they're like, well, that's well spoken. Because of Magni, the Earthen are willing to work with us. And it's not that they're not ignorant of the fact that this is weird and out of place, and their society was supposed to be like clockwork precision, but it clearly isn't anymore. And they're trying to figure out, what do we do? Magni is the closest thing they've seen to like an actual like anointed servant of the Titans in eons. They used to have these diamond guys showing up all the time, but they don't have them anymore. So they're willing to go along with Magni and his weird assortment of people and figure out what's going on. Which, ironically enough, and I don't know if you thought this when you saw it, Joe, but doesn't it kind of play into the whole ritual that Magni did in the first place? Yeah,
I think it harkens back to that because if I remember correctly, back then it was the discussion of, okay, well, here's this ritual, and looking at the ritual, it basically describes these diamond Earthen or these beings that are capable of communicating with the world based off of their position or whatever. Like, he didn't know what he was reading, but I remember like the visual of the book being very much that.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Like, when I remember seeing it, I thought, this is really kind of fascinating, because it's like, finally, why does this ritual exist? What does Azeroth need help picking who they anoint as their speaker? But it's clearly it was a role people could be appointed to. It was something you could take up. So that in and of itself was pretty fascinating. We then start like the outside, like the first zone, the Khaz Algar like surface zone is really big, and a lot of stuff is happening. There's an attack on the mountain where the Storm Riders get their mounts. That's happening. There's traitors inside the organization attacking them in their training facility, which is the first dungeon. You have to go deal with a lot of different things. At the end of the zone, Baelgar ends up dying fighting the Nerubians. He sacrifices himself to help you defeat the Nerubians who are attacking and trying to like destroy the Earthen's ability to resist them. Mm-hmm. Which is, the thing is Baelgar really serves as an interesting character because he starts off completely rigidly devoted to the rules of the Titans. And by the end of it, you find out that he had this sort of unwitting relationship with one of the Earthen that, you're sent to find, whose name always comes. I can't remember any of these characters' names. This is what drives me nuts. I've been playing this game for so long. Everybody has a new name. It's like, oh God, more people with new names. But as a result of him dealing with the fact that his people have been scattering and they don't know what to do, they don't know what roles to play, his certainty of his own role, especially when you go into the base of the Storm Riders and see that it's been attacked and corrupted by the old gods, he's like, no, we do need to change. We need to embrace a new role. And he sacrifices himself so you get to do it. You get to save his people, which is kind of emblematic of the story the Earthen go through in this expansion. Mm-hmm. And we'll be talking more about it. But the Earthen are in a position where they no longer know what their role is. They knew what it was for eons. They had complete certainty about what their role was, but they don't anymore. So you get through that beginning, and again, we're totally missing a whole bunch of things. There's a big story element in Khaz Algar that we'll come back to, but it's you have to go underground first and see the other zones before you come back to it.
Yeah, and part of the big element of the story is, like Matt pointed out, where you learn that the core way has been broken, is that you're tasked with helping them clear the core way. You help them clear the core way. You make connection with the Earthen that are below, in the essentially the what is the power works of the entire island or at least their city, and then you wind up discovering that Xal'atath is here, and it's not just at above the training facility that we see the void corruption being offered to some of these Earthen and having them turn into Skarden, but it's everywhere below as well. And part of the reason that that's important is because below ground there are elements here that, like, this is how the facility where Earthen are born is here. And it is potentially being corrupted by Xal'atath's void influence. And
by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the woman in question that was involved with Baelgarm was Adelgon, who was the Storm Warden, the Stone Warden. She was the one that talked to the Earth, essentially.
Yeah, she was one of the Unbound.
Left the council. Yeah, and she left the council and was part of the Unbound. She ends up rejoining the council through her interaction with Baelgrim. Like, he kind of gets her. It's interesting because they both affect the other. He kind of gets her to realize that she needs to go back, and she gets him to realize that he has not been doing his job to defend his people because he isn't defending the ones that left. So yeah, that's a big part of that whole storyline, is the Earthen realizing the Titans aren't important compared to each other.
Yeah, there's in between spots there, but one of the things that I think is important to note is that they are resistant to outsiders, and eventually you earn their trust by helping them with these things. You clear out the underground, you bring back the High Speaker position. Brinth is the one that takes over as High Speaker for the Gundraz Earthen, and you wind up bringing your allies to the island. So Ilaria was here. She had been from the beginning. She was on the Dalaran when it went down, but now you have Jaina Proudmoore and Thrall show up, and now the Horde and Alliance are starting to again work together to help the Earthen to figure out what's going on. After you're done dealing with all of that, you are sent to go reach out to what they call Warriors of Light, or humans that had been seen that have been living underground. And you go out with Anduin in tow to find the people known as the Arathi. And when you get there, they're under siege by the various Nerubians that are making their, essentially assaulting their positions because their magic sky stone, Beladar, has stopped producing only light and has started producing shadow or void as well ever since Xal'atath showed up. And you see much of the same elements above that are echoed here below. The Arathi are tired. They're worn. They've been doing this for a while. And Xal'atath comes along, and some of them take what she's selling. They become cultists to the void, and much the same way we've seen that promise of power so often before. We see that the Arathi hail the light, but not in the same way that those above do. And this is sort of like, we joke that this is the how Anduin got his groove back portion of the expansion, but it really is. It's how Anduin learns to accept what has happened to him, not forget it, but to move past blaming himself for everything that happened and learn to call upon the light again, through his interaction with, why can I not remember her name, but General Steelstrike's daughter.
Farron.
Thank you. Farron Lothar. We learn that there's a connection between Anduin Lothar, the one that Anduin is named after, and the Arathi, and the bloodline of Lothar apparently continued. There's all these things that we know or we learn through this interaction, and eventually we help them take out the Order of Night. We help them take out the Priory, which had gone fanatical to the light to the point of resurrecting with necromancy, something we've talked about on the show before, where you can commit necromancy with the light as much as you could void or magic, and they basically prove it. The entire Priory is all about this, bringing their recently dead back to life, or those that fell in battle to the Nerubians, because again, these people are cut off from home. They wound up getting pulled here by magic through a storm when they were just on an expedition. They don't know how to get back home. They can't connect back home. And every time they lose somebody, their numbers dwindle, and it drives some of them to the brink to see what they can do to replenish their numbers and bring them back. And it's us that have to break down those walls. And not only are we doing that and helping them break free of these cults and learn the way to essentially move forward, and they're helping us by, again, Anduin learning how to wield the light again, we're also breaching the gap between them and the Earthen. We are getting a trade agreement, a much needed trade agreement between the two, and a pact of cooperation where the Earthen and the Arathi will fight together to essentially stop what's happening in the Nerubian Palace. It's a really eye-opening, I guess, section, because it doesn't just focus on the big overarching story, which is always there. In the zone itself, shifting from day to night and having such a switch in what occurs during that time frame is really, really impressive. But it's a slice of life as well. You learn how these people have been surviving, how their lives look, like the fact that they are still having children here and trying to raise families among being in like a war-torn area. You learn little bits and pieces of the Arathi Empire, not everything, so to speak, but a lot there. And it's a really cool encapsulation of what that would potentially look like for anybody stuck in that situation.
Then we go to Spider Town.
Yeah, so let's talk about Spider Town.
Yeah, the thing is that the whole time the Nerubians are invading, we've been like trying to figure out, how did Xal'atath hook up with all these Nerubians? And it turns out that Xal'atath originally attempted to talk to the queen of the Nerubians, and I'm always getting her and her daughter confused. Ansurak's the daughter, right?
Ansurak's the daughter.
Yeah, what was the mother's name?
I can't remember.
I'll find out shortly. Yeah, basically, Xal'atath reaches out to the Nerubian queen and is trying to convince her that she should join up with Xal'atath and her Void-loving forces. And the queen is like, "Oh, you think we've forgotten you? No, I remember serving your masters. I remember how my people were, like, their lives were spent like water in the pursuit of your mission. I want nothing to do with you."
Yeah, Queen Neferis did not want anything to do with that servitude again.
Yeah, she's like, "Nope, no, thank you." And as Xal'atath was making her push, you see that rejection, but then you hear from Xal'atath, "I wasn't actually talking to you." And Ansurak, her daughter, comes up behind her and just basically shanks her. And she's like, "Why? Why would you do this?" And she's like, "To get power. We're stuck down here. We don't, the Nerubians don't rule the world. We're not mighty. None of the promises were fulfilled because we turned away from the void. And now you've got us like waiting down here forever. We do not want that. We want, I want to rule. I want to be a queen of an expanding people. So basically, her mother Neferis gets turned into a monstrosity. They're experimenting on infusing people with void from the black blood of the earth.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing of the zone is the black blood, right? Like,
yeah,
we have theories on what it is. It has not been explicitly stated what it was, but we're pretty sure
wind,
it's all
fire, all
blood.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm gonna make the Big Trouble in Little China references. But yeah, it's the whole deal of what's really going on with the Nerubians. A big part of it is these special Nerubian servitors that Xal'atath has created somehow. She's infused them with power beyond their normal their station, and they're effectively usurping the rule that like the actual there's a whole Nerubian noble class.
And it should be noted, these are living Nerubians. These are not the undead husks of Northrend.
No, this is not the ones that the Lich King was controlling. It's like the ones in Northrend that we saw when we went into the old city are the living ones. And these are similar to those. But this kingdom hasn't fallen. It's been basically left to its own devices all these many years. So only now, with Neferis basically transformed into a monstrosity, and Ansurak basically working directly for Xal'atath, you now have this period where Xal'atath is clearly experimenting with the black blood, but it's weird what she's doing, and that she seems to be, for lack of a better word, it doesn't feel like Xal'atath cares what happens with the Nerubians. It's not like they really matter to her. It's a stepping stone.
I think it's more than that. I think as you get to the end of it, because I think a lot of it tends to be because there are depraved individuals among the Nerubians. There are flesh crafters and puppeteers and folks that are not exactly what you would consider conventionally sane that work through this. But one of the things I think is interesting is all of the empowering of the void leads to almost Cathraxi adjacent, old god adjacent creations. And it almost feels like Xal'atath is using the Nerubians, who, according to other sources, and this might not be true, and I think it is actually a lie, were born of old god flesh to begin with. I think they were a perversion of things that existed already on Azeroth, and I think this is where that experimentation comes in. How did the old gods create the Cathraxi? How did they get to be so big and powerful? How do you subsume the void? And all while doing this, she's utilizing the dark heart. In the chase of us going through, and this happens in between us going to Bugville and between Lighttown, where Illyria cracks the dark heart and forces essentially Xal'atath back. We recapture Khadgar, and as we're going through the City of Threads, as we're going through in dealing with all the monstrosities there, we also learn that there's an ethereal Princess Kyvexa working with Ansurak, working for presumably Xal'atath, but also could possibly be Iridikron, who has yet to be revealed who they were working for. We make our way through the palace, eventually breaking through all of the forces, all of the various monstrosities of the Black Blood. We literally fight the Black Blood and make our way through with the help of the Severed Threads, which are the Weaver, the General, and the Vizier, who are all working against Queen Ansurak and her loyalists, and working with the people or the entities that are loyal to the old queen, the old way, who don't want to be controlled anymore, want freedom, want to forge their own destiny. You eventually defeat all of these monsters. You defeat Queen Ansurak, who calls upon the void to try to empower herself. And then in those final moments, two things happen. One, you have discovered that Queen Ansurak's mother is still alive, just horribly mutated, and you've helped claw her back, and you leave it in a place of where the Vizier and the General and the Weaver are going to look at seeing what they can do to reverse that, if they can at all, and try to reverse the rest of the experimentations. And 2, in the final death throes of Queen Ansurak, she calls to Xal'atath, and Xal'atath says, "You were a disappointment. You did what I needed you to do. I don't need you anymore. You couldn't help yourself. Why would I help you?" And then disappears. And
I try to remember how it's pointed. Isn't it something along the lines of like, she said, "You promised me," and something, and Xal'atath's like, "I didn't promise you anything.
Yeah,
but I gave you everything, and this is where you ended up." The void doesn't care. Was it something that the void only cares about those who win or something?
I don't know if it went that far, but it was basically you couldn't win with the power I gave you, so why am I going to give you more? But then that's where we leave Spider Town, and that is the end of the first section, or at least the opening act, or Act 1 of the War Within campaign. Act 2 gets into the Undermine campaign, which is where we're at right now, which opens with Xal'atath having retreated after the disruption of her plans, and we meet with Orwenya, Orwenya, sorry, don't know how to pronounce that, but a Haranir. These are we don't know for sure what their origin are, but they look like the evolution step between Night Troll and Night Elf. They are very much Druid adjacent. We've dealt with them a little bit in the original opening campaign.
Yeah, you run into them when you're first trying to figure out what the heck's going on with the Black Blood.
Yeah.
And they seem to know a lot more about the Black Blood, but they don't want to tell us.
Yeah. But we meet up with her because she sees visions from the World Soul as well. She hears the song. And so you go with them. You're investigating the remaining Black Blood in Hollowfall. Hanan, who is another Haranir that is with Orwena, becomes frustrated with Orwena for ignoring their people's isolationism before leaving her alone to return to their homeland. Orwena then receives a vision from Azeroth that leads her to the Ringing Deeps, where you go and help investigate with Gazlo, because there's a large goblin presence here. There's a weird goblin presence on the islands from the get-go. In Act 1, you see them in all over the top of Khaz Algar, right? They're making deals with the meadery and taking over the meadery. They're pretty much everywhere, and you don't kind of understand why, because why are there goblins here when the rest of the Alliance just got here? Because there weren't goblins on, or the rest of the Horde and the Alliance got here. There weren't goblins in Dalaran, at least not a lot of them. So why are they here? You find that there is essentially goblins are operating at the behest of Jaster Gallywix to get their hands on the Black Blood. And you find out that they are taking that Black Blood back to Undermine, which is not too far away from where we are right now, which puts us very far east, more east than I think we thought we were, west than we thought we were. If you're leaving from the Horde side of things, and they're trying to turn it into weapons. They're experimenting with, they're making potions, they're turning it into all various forms of destruction, as goblins are wont to do, and you are trying to prevent them from getting their hands on more of it. And you're working with Gazelle, you're working with Resnick the Shiv, and you're starting to make your way to Undermine to find out what Gallywix is really trying to do with the Black Blood, what the whole purpose of it was. Yeah, I don't know if there's much more to talk about that, unless I'll turn it over to you.
Well, we should talk about specifically what happens at the end, which is that after you eventually you start opposing Gallywix and working through what the heck is actually going on.
Well, I think I don't want to jump to the end immediately, because a lot of stuff happens in Undermine.
Yeah, I can't possibly relate all of it. I just want let me do this bit. Basically, in order to do what he's trying to do, do we not want to talk about Xal'atath and
no, we have a spoiler warning.
Okay. Basically, when Xal'atath got the Dark Heart smashed by Ilaria, she needed it fixed, She wants to have, it was where she was keeping a lot of the power she's been stealing for whatever reason she's doing that. So she goes and she's trying to find somebody who can fix it. But there aren't many people who can fix that thing. And most of them were on the city that she blew up. So she kind of doesn't have a ton of options, but she knows that Jaster Gallywix was involved in all the stuff that happened in Battle for Azeroth and various things using both Azerite and later on when Sylvanas was working on, the Jailer's plan. Gallywix was kind of on the edges of that. He understands the various, I don't want to say secretions, but I can't come up with a better word. If Azerite is the blood of Azeroth, the black blood seems to be like the blood of the old gods. We don't know what it is. We don't know if that's what it is, but it seems to be akin to stuff like Azerite and therefore Khajiit. And so Gallywix might be the only person who's got a chance to fix it. So she goes to him and says, fix it. And he's like, all right, I need this stuff to do that. She gives him a bunch of stuff to do it, but he doesn't get it fixed fast enough for Xal'atath. So Xal'atath's like, he says to Xal'atath, I need more time, I need more help, and I need more of that black blood stuff. Rather than just give it to him, which is, again, very similar to what we saw with Ansurak, she doesn't just give it to him, she tells him, here's where you can get it. And that's why the already interested in the black blood goblins now start getting even more interested. This allows him ultimately to get Martin Nagenfogger to help him. But Nagenfogger doesn't like the guy. He's being extorted.
Mm-hmm.
However, this means that Undermine, which is now basically there's this whole cartel that's running Undermine, and now Gallywix has kind of subverted it because he's got Xal'atath backing him as long as she gets what she wants. And she straight up confronts him several times. And she's like, you don't want to disappoint me. Somebody else just disappointed me. It didn't go well for her. You do not want to do that. Eventually, though, while we're in Undermine, so much stuff is going on. I don't even have to talk about it. I mean, Gazlow's there.
Yeah, so
the Dark Market's there. The council, the cartels of Undermine don't like Gallywix, and they don't like each other.
Well, they're
essentially
essentially made to compete with each other and stay in Gallywix's good graces, because the first introduction to it is essentially a meeting between all of the cartels, in which somebody does try to stand up and say, this is bad for business, why are we following them, only to be completely incinerated by one of these black blood weapons, a black blood flamethrower that one of his enforcers uses to destroy it. And you wind up seeing that there's essentially almost like a military rule or a martial law being imposed by Gallywix on all of Undermine. And as you pull back, you see that his essentially, I forgot what they're called. They're the Dark something cartel. But they're essentially
Fuse enforcement, I think.
Yeah, Dark Fuse. But they're essentially his soldiers of fortune that he's paying to ensure his rule and ensure compliance with everybody in the Undermine. And so your entire task here is to essentially help free and liberate Undermine from the rule of Gallywix. The Xal'atath stuff is almost secondary. The only thing that really is integrated is the key points that Matt laid out, the creation of the black blood, and the deal that Gallywix is trying to strike with, again, for more power with Xal'atath. So while you're making your way through and trying to essentially fight back Gallywix's forces and help free the cartels, working with them to get them situated, to get them free, to get them right, while that's happening, Gallywix is still working on this thing. What winds up happening at one point is another force starts showing up, Dark Ethereals. Now, we've talked about them before. These are void-infused ethereals that are not part of Locust Walker's, in his thing with the Void Elves. In fact, Locust Walker is essentially hunted by them and has been for a while. Through this and your interaction with it, you find that I forgot the Nexus Prince's name, But there is a Nexus Princess shows up and gets the now repaired, as Gallywix says, worked his butt off to get it repaired, dark heart from him. Xalatath shows up. Xalatath says, "Where's my dark heart?" And he goes, "Well, I gave it to your guy." "What guy?" "Your ethereal friend. He came and asked for it, so I gave it to him. He's working for you, right?"
Was it Azir?
It might have been Azir. Yes, I think it was. But I gave it to him. And you see the look on her face as it's, okay, fine. And essentially expresses her disappointment and then abandons Gallywix as everything that he built is slowly falling down around him. Essentially, at this point, while this is going on, we have chased him back. We tried to get the Dark Heart back. We failed to get the Dark Heart before the Trade Prince got it. We didn't confront Xalatath here, but we've beaten Gallywix back essentially to just his casino, the Galagio. So all that's left is we have two choices. We can go after the Ethereals and the Dark Heart and Xalatath, or we can finish helping the Undermine. And we choose, at this point, the most pertinent one, even with Illyria's blessing, as she goes and does the stalking and hunting that she's known for. We work our way through freeing the Undermine by breaking into the casino, fighting through the various forces, and unfortunately for what Gazlo says, he tries the entire time to talk Gallywix down. Gallywix will not accept it, will not look past his ego and ambition. Maybe it's because of the Azerite that he still has on his staff, who knows. You eventually kill Gazlo. And then afterwards you help put the pieces together, because in
Gallywix, we kill Gallywix.
Yes, sorry, Gallywix, not Gazlo. Wow, sorry. But then in the
what?
Yeah.
For a second there, seriously, dude. For a second there, I was going, oh my god, no!
Too many G names. I apologize. While this is happening, while you're liberating it, Resnick winds up dying. He dives in front of a shot that was meant to kill Gazlo. That's where I was getting my wires crossed. And so after you've defeated Gallywix, you're going through with Gazlo and setting things right. You're making sure that the people are ready to go. You're dividing out the last effects of Gallywix to his heir to make sure that it goes to somebody who's not going to use the wealth and power and the casino for nefarious purposes. And Gazlo sits down and starts showing the rest of the goblins the better way. And this is a callback to Battle for Azeroth. Because in Battle for Azeroth, Gazlo is the one in all the stories and the game itself that is trying to tell people we don't have to cut corners for safety. We should be being safe. It's cheaper long term to be safe. We should not just do things because we can do them. We should be a little more considerate about it. We should care about each other a little bit more. We are smart. We're capable. We're better. And you see that influence start to go through the rest of the Undermine as the various cartels start falling in line with that. They don't want to be just cartels anymore. Noggenfogger wants to be better at, and make atone for all the stuff he did under duress. You see the venture company being under new leadership and being less about unfettered capitalistic gains and maybe a little bit more about that venture side of things. It's a heartwarming-ish. I don't want to say it's perfectly idyllic, but when you end the Undermine, you've left it in a far better place than where you found it. And I want to point out that because this is one of the extraordinarily few times that the adventurers have actually left a place better than they found it. We didn't blow anything up. Well, we blew up portions of the Galagio. I don't know if that really counts. We didn't destroy anything. We actually defeated the person we wanted to defeat. We put people in charge that actually know what they're doing. And there's actually hope. So this is one of those few moments where we didn't mess up.
Unless you're Rosebud Gallywix.
True.
Hey, look, it's the one good Gallywix. Oh, he's dead. That didn't last long. But yeah, also we should point out, we have the next patch is coming fairly soon. As we're recording this, I don't think it'll be out this month, right?
Yes, should be out this month.
So that's
at the time of this recording's release, probably right around the time this recording's released.
Yeah. That's going to be set in the Arathi Highlands, and it's going to be dealing with possibly a connection to the Arathor. I'm assuming the Arathor that we know, the ones who are underground, want to go up and see the old homeland. So it's probably at least somewhat involved there. But we're at the end when Face Thief Azir shows up and gets the Dark Heart. We see him go through a portal. If you played in Legion, there's a world you see. Yeah. But it looks to be like the world you see in the Astromancer encounter, because it's this world that looks to be completely corrupted and overrun by the void, which would fit Koresh, because that's what we heard. The whole deal with the Ethereals is that they got turned into Ethereals by the corruption and destruction of Koresh. It looks to be at least possibly where we're going at some point.
Yeah, and I just want to take a moment to sort of recap and take stock of like the bullet points of everything we've done so far here inside of the first two acts. One thing that we didn't touch on in Act 1, and I want to just go back and notate, the Earthen are broken free of the Titan influence, and we find out that this is where the seed is planted, that the Titans are not as nice as they maybe come off as, or we think they are, because again, the victor tends to write history. Because as soon as they break their oath tablet, which has all of the recorded, like what their oaths are, their purpose, their directive, a giant Titan construct comes out of the water and tries to kill them. We stop that from happening. We give the Earthen a new lease on life, and we allow them to start actually recapturing who they are as a people, because we find out as the campaign moves along, and as you do things like there's a weekly quest that pops up to grab Titan fragments and take them back to essentially a Titan console. These are discs. These are memories, Norgannon's memories in particular. And you find out that the Earthen were getting too alive for what the Titans were comfortable with. And so this whole process of them losing their memories and starting a whole new life cycle, essentially breaking down and like submitting their memories to this giant machine, is because if they were left too long, the diamond ones would occur. This life force would emerge that would sort of, make them not quite curse of flesh, but pretty like the in-between stage between being a full Titan construct and being what we are. And then we bring that back to them as well. Magni goes with us and we free the void corruption from the vault that they're created in. And that energy from Azeroth leaves Magni, makes him mortal again, brings him back as as far as I'm concerned, a reward, but also jumpstarts a process that seems to have been Azeroth's goal since Magni turned originally, to have a new speaker, to have a person, a diamond body that was the embodiment of Azeroth's power, and to bring more of those back, because every Earthen that's born after it, every player character, is one of those souls, is somebody who has memory, who dreamed, who's capable of dreaming, who is a full Earthen, not this mechanical thing that they had before. We go to the Algari. We help them with their fight against, or the Arathi. We fight against the corrupted Arathis. We beat back the cults. We take out the folks that are trying to whip up this sort of cultish fervor for the light and the void, bring them back to some semblance of peace and normalcy. We fight back the Nerubians under the control of Queen Ansurak. We give them trade routes back to the surface, which gives them precious supplies that they need and allies. They now have access to the Earthen as allies, who have been fully restored to their power, that can now help the Arathi out. They have access to the Horde and the Alliance now as well, and the trade therein, something that they previously haven't had, because the Empire itself is its own standing thing. We learn more about the Arathi Empire, not a lot, but enough to make us curious, and hint that we will be going there at some point soon. We then make our way into the Queen Ansurak's court, I guess would be the best way to put it. this giant cavity that looks like it was once where an old god's body stood, and this may be the decaying flesh of part of an old god. This might be part of Yasharaj. We don't know, but the black blood and the fleshy bits seem to indicate that this is something large that used to be here and used to be in charge of these folks. We take the loyalists, we fight back against Queen Ansurak, we instill order there. We bring them back from the brink, essentially, and give them back their lives. Again, a rare instance where we leave things potentially better than we found them. We then continue our chasing of the Black Blood in Xal'atath to make our way into the Undermine. We find out what's happening with the goblins in the Undermine. We find out how bad it is, and we find out how bad Gallywix's plans are and his control over the people are. And it is absolutely like slum conditions for everybody who is not Gallywix. I'm sorry, Gazlo. I'm doing it again. We free them from the control of Gallywix. We basically let them have their lives back, and we leave the Undermine potentially a better place than it was before, cleaning up all of the experimentations, destroying the weapons that were constructed from the Black Blood, and completing essentially I don't want to say the task that was set up to us by the Haranir, or the why can I not remember the name? Essentially the Night Trolls, and leave us in a position where now we can start focusing on other things as we're reuniting essentially all these different people and making them not enemies, but allies. And I think we're going to potentially get to a point where we can call on some of the Nerubians to come help us when we need it. We're going to have the Arathi that we can call on because we're going to be fighting alongside of them, and we're going to have all of the Earthen. We are actually doing the thing that we failed to do every other expansion, and it makes me very, very happy. I'll let Matt cue in on anything he wants to add here.
I mean, I think that basically you've covered pretty much what's happened so far. I was going to mention that there's also, like, in addition to the fact that the Titans are kind of like showing off like someone of their villainous era, it's also interesting that Arcadis was apparently deeply involved in this.
Yeah.
Arcadis is the Titan construct, one of the Watchers, who, along with Tyr and Aranaya, took the Discs of Norgannon from Ulduar and took them to Uldaman. And also, we just woke Tyr up.
Mm-hmm.
In the last expansion, so it's quite possible we could be seeing Arcadis again.
Yeah,
and that, because
you raise a good point.
Yeah, Arcadis was quote unquote killed by a group of adventurers raiding Uldaman. But come on, it's not that if you can bring them back, you can bring them back. And is Arcadis the one? When you're first doing all this stuff, when you're first running around with Daegran, I want to say Anduin, but it was Daegran, with Daegran Thorasan III. You and Brinth and him find a recording of some Titan Watcher figure who's
shrouded,
neck deep. Yeah, a shrouded figure who's neck deep in the whole memory erasure thing that we find out later was done by the Titans to keep the Earthen from, becoming too real for the Titans' comfort. And this feels very much like it's involved in what we've already discovered in previous expansions about, specifically our buddy Odin, who is keeping stuff from people and editing what we know, and who sent in a group chasing after quote unquote criminals that have escaped his rule and gone to a place called Avaloran. It's quite possible that Khaz Algar was a step on the way, or the place they fled from. Like, these rebels might have been Earthen who were like, I'm not letting you take my memories and, make me die.
And for all we know, Avaloran might be another name for the Arathi Empire too. It could be that
place,
further place west.
Yeah, that the place where they ended up and built their empire. It might be one of the. There's a lot going on heading towards the future. We have a possibility that we're going to go to Koresh. We have a possibility that we're going to go to Avaloran and maybe the Arathi Empire. We know the Arathi are going to be doing something in the Arathi Highlands fairly soon. It doesn't feel like there are a lot of missing pieces that we haven't seen yet, which is surprising. Chief among them, in my opinion, are Ridicron.
Yeah, and these are things that, again, we're in even though we're in Act 2, moving to Act 3 of this expansion, we are in Act 1 of a 3 expansion cycle where the
Yeah.
story is directly tied for not just here, but moving into Midnight. And so some of what we're seeing here is a lot of the groundwork being laid for that as well. Because again, I'm thinking of it like in Act 1, you're laying out Chekhov's gun. You're putting it on the table and showing people where you're going and whether or not
we're literally watching it get built.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in every movie with the sniper where the sniper is sitting there putting the gun together. That's literally what we're watching happen.
Yeah, and what the end result of that is, we're not going to really know until we literally are prepared to move away from here into Midnight. But I find it very fascinating that we're building allies. We're not just fighting people. We are, like, because it wouldn't be a game otherwise. But the overlying theme is we're getting help. We're uniting people. We're bringing folks back together from the brink. We didn't even touch on the Kieran Tor story arc, because that's its own thing. And honestly, we might do a whole episode on the Kieran Tor story arc from where we were to where we are now. But even that has that same undercurrent. It's bringing folks back together and redefining who you are. Every single step of the expansion, every single group, it's coming back together as a people and redefining who you are and making those choices for yourself. It's that independence, that main character thing that we talk about all the time. It's a very fascinating building season. And while we haven't tinfoil hatted nearly as much as we normally do with an expansion, part of that is because, like Matt said, we're watching it be built in real time, and we don't know what threads are actual loose threads or things yet. And when we get to the end of this expansion, that's when we're off to the races, because that's when we start moving towards larger events. Will Iridikron come back? Probably in Midnight. We're going to see shades of Iridikron, if not Iridikron as a whole.
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting thing to keep in mind, is that we don't know what of the various things we're seeing, as Joe pointed out. We don't know what will be in this expansion and what will be in the next. We don't know, are we going to Koresh this expansion? Are we going there next expansion? Is it going to be is Koresh the starting area for the next expansion? Is that the place we go? There's a ton we don't know right now.
And the other thing that also is something to keep in mind too, is not just where we're going to go in those expansions, but how that story is going to be told is still unfolding, and what pieces are going to essentially be pulled up from the past to make that headway. It's an interesting time. I think it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the story of this expansion, is because there's so many places it could go. It has so much potential, as an expansion that deals with the Void should absolutely have. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the direction is after this and what pieces. And you could already start seeing the groundwork for the stuff with the Titans, even beyond just what is ham-fistedly laid out for you with the discs. The interaction between the various organizations, these ethereal forces, these cosmic forces that are at play here still, are absolutely just ripe with potential. But I think we're going to call it there. I know we missed stuff. There's only so much time that we have to do this. We'll probably do another one relatively soon. But I do want to thank everybody for hanging out with us. If you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, be sure to send those in to podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. If you want to hit us up on Discord, we have 2 channels set aside. We have the Q and Podcast Questions channel, which is open for everybody. The same rules apply there. Send in an email. Just make sure you specify the name and any special pronunciation, or specify the show and any special pronunciation of your name. And then if you are a Patreon subscriber, we have the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel. We do tend to look there first, just a way of saying thank you. And you can also hit us up on Patreon directly. Send us themes, send us questions, send us anything you want us to talk about, folks. We're getting to that point of the season where usually you guys have really good questions and you want to know what's going on, or you have very specific thoughts. And I appreciate all of you that take the time to submit those questions. now's the time that we call upon them. Send those in. Give us things to tinfoil hat and riff off of, because I want to make sure that we cover everything that you guys want to talk about. But with that, folks, we'll see you next week.